Hello, my name's Sean Connors, this is Outsiders, and welcome back. Today's programme is all going to be about rules lawyers, what it means, how to combat them, and things that you can do to basically, shall we say, put them where you need to place them around your table. Now, a number of you have asked about this subject, and so I thought this would be a great opportunity to cover it off. It wouldn't be very easy to do it just as a mailbag programme, and it wouldn't be very easy to do it as a sort of DM's tips programme, so it's somewhere in between, so it'll just be an episode all of its own. So first off, let's understand what a rules lawyer is. That's somebody who's probably deep down incredibly passionate about the game you're running. They've certainly bought the books. They might have bought all the books. They might have all the books and more of the books than you've actually got. So the problem is with the rules lawyer, by its very definition, they want to quote to you the rules of the game. And that is the problem. Now, there are actually two types of rules lawyer. You've got the rules lawyer who is absolutely accurate and really knows his stuff. And then you've got the other one who interprets it, well, only one line of the rule as opposed to the whole rule itself, and often in their own favour. And that is the problem that you can be faced with. They're actually somewhat more destructive than the first kind. So how do you actually deal with people like that? Well, the first thing is that, to be honest, it's not necessarily a terribly bad thing to have a rules lawyer in your game, because they're very passionate. That's the first thing. They want to play. So that's good. Secondly, it can be a real advantage, because if you're new, don't be afraid, particularly when it's the early steps of your DMing. If you need someone around the table for that particular night who's going to be your rules lawyer guy, it's a great terminology, you've used it before in other videos, then select one of those rule lawyer guys. Say, look, tonight, when I need you, and those are the key words, when I need you, and I tell you I think it's important to check this up, you go ahead and you check it up. Otherwise, I don't want to hear about it, okay? And that's the clear line you have to mark down, that it's when you say, because you're in charge, it's your game. Personally, I prefer the method of letting everybody know from straight away the very first campaign session, the very first session, particularly with inexperienced players, that the rules are there to be interpreted by the DM, and I will always be fair about that. But there are inevitably going to be some grey areas where I have to make a judgment call. And not only that, also there may be times when the very rules themselves are broken. They don't apply in a particular situation, and therefore again that could be because of various reasons that you're not aware of. Now obviously I'm not going to pull that stroke on the players very often in a campaign. You know, I'm not going to use it as a tool to beat them over the head with, but the reality is that these things do happen and players need to be aware of it. Again, setting the fundamentals and setting the path that you want the players to ultimately go down. You know, so you're making it clear to them that you're in charge effectively. Now, another thing that you can do, which I think is very applicable for rules lawyering type people, is I like to beat them by playing the game better than they do. So I like to, you know, it's my session coming up. I know likelihood of what's going to come into that session. So I know clearly what rules I might need to recap myself my own memory on, or some stuff that I want to throw in that rarely comes up, so that I can show my control of the game by my knowledge of the game. So let me try and give you an example of that. So there's, you know, a situation might come up where you know in a particular situation that the players may have to resort to using certain skills to get out of trouble. So knowing how those skills work, how to apply them, whether you're going to allow them to do certain things, what are the things the players most likely will take. It's just thinking around the problems ahead, and because you've got those rules to hand, remember that's what the screen's there for. You can just have little print notes up on the other side of the screen or whatever you're using. So you've got it to hand and can quote it quickly to the players around the table, potentially rules lawyers, really puts them into place. Because you can say, right, this is what happens. And watch the reaction as well, because if you know the rule really well, they're probably going to start nodding in agreement. Now the other way to really get them is to throw some really interesting spanners in the grey areas of the game. So a great example of this, and we're just using Pathfinder here, 3.5 3rd edition, all applicable. You can do it for any game. But one recently, I noticed a couple of players were starting to forget who's boss, who's in charge. So I needed to re-establish a little bit of control in a game. And what I did is I was waiting for a particular moment to come up, and then it struck me in the middle of the game. The characters were affected by a web spell. And one of the players had on, naturally one was a cleric who had freedom of movement on, so that was easy to interpret. And for those that don't know, by the very definition of the words freedom of movement pretty much tells you could get out of trouble. But one of the other characters had recently put on spider climb, so I just instantly ruled that he was okay to operate within a web. Now, it's not covered in the rules, but it's a fantastic use of the grey area. and the look on the players' faces, and I was able to say, obviously it's not covered in the rules, but I think you all agree it's a very good judgment call. And naturally all they could do was nod in approval. Now later, when I need to make another call which was against the players, what could they do but agree with it? Because I've already set the groundwork ahead. So those are the keys really with rules lawyers. So let's quickly recap it. First things first, making sure that you know what session is, you know the session that's coming up, being aware of those key rules that are likely to come up. Particularly if you've got any unusual items in your game as well, bear those in mind with rules lawyers because they're bound to want to throw those in the mix from time to time. So be prepared for that as well. Second thing is as well is make sure that if you need to, utilise one of the rules lawyers around you to be the rules lawyer guy for that night, just to help you out and equally make them feel important within the game. Set the precedence of your campaign early, make it really clear who's in charge. And those are the fundamentals when going forward. Now if you've already got in your group players that are rules lawyering to you and it's too late because the campaign's already underway, then just make sure you know your session ahead, prepare hard and just put them in their place with chapter and verse rules. Yes, I know this very well. In this particular situation, this is what you're going to have to do. And know where the page is, because nothing hurts a player more, particularly a rules lawyer, than you being able to say, it's page 302, it's the third paragraph down. If you read that, it says, and I quote, boom, 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 boom. You suddenly find they switch on to you as a referee, and they really listen to what you're saying, because you know the rules. And eventually they stop looking. The other thing you should definitely do, if you've got a group of people who are putting rules at you, and you feel maybe you need a little bit more control, tell them they can only have their players' handbooks or any books to do with the game only during the times where the characters are levelling up, it's the end of the session, that sort of thing, or if somebody needs access to the spells that they're going to learn for that particular system and are unsure. If there's a particular reason they need the book because they're not quite clear on something, maybe. But try to be quite hard on the use of the books. It will pay off in the long run. Because often a rules lawyer will need the book in front of him to actually quote from. So that's another piece of advice that you should certainly use. Anyway, listen, I've been Sean Connors. This has been Outsiders. This has all been about rules lawyering. I hope you found it of some use. Please give your comments, and for those experienced DMs out there, again, feel free to chip in, add pieces on, and thank you very much for the questions. Keep them coming. Take care of yourselves and happy gaming.